back in those days, in the early 60s, there wasn't such a thing as dyslexia, so I just was called stupid my whole younger school life. And I just always remember we had to spell Australia before we left the classroom, and I just couldn't spell it. And I just remember teachers every day getting so frustrated with me because they wanted to go home, and I would be sitting there trying my hardest. And it was just one of those things where you put in remedial classes and you get, your confidence gets shaken a lot because it wasn't recognised then. And it wasn't until actually one teacher took some time out and really gave me such amazing confidence. He let me do my tests orally rather than written, because orally I could tell the answers, I just couldn't write them down on paper. And he also never asked me anything in class because I had a really bad stutter at school, so he never forced me to speak publicly. But when I left the classroom, he would sort of call me back and ask me a few questions. And it was just amazing that this one teacher really instilled something in me to say, look, you're not stupid, you just don't fit into the system. Yeah. So it was funny, when I made my first $1 million from my pajama company, I tracked the teacher down who I had in grade 3 or 4. Mr. Davidson was his name, and I tracked him down, and I went over to have a coffee with him. He must have been about in his 70s by then, and I told him, I'd been a success and I've made my first $1 million, and I wanted to share that with him, and he was so happy. And he said, I so remember you at school, and I remember actually seeing you in the press about your pajamas. And so it was a really nice thing to do, but it's amazing how one teacher can make such a huge difference to one's childhood.
Well, it'd be a scary thought of what would have happened to Peter Alexander if he hadn't have come along.
Yeah, true. I mean, my parents never put pressure on me and understood it. But I suppose everyone always thinks their parents think they're marvellous anyway, but it was the fact that the teacher never embarrassed me in school and always gave me a chance to pass tests the way I, could do. And it was just incredible. And I always, we, as a society, we so underrate teachers. They're just so important.
Yeah, there's some wonderful teachers out there for sure. So was it a happy childhood?
Yeah, it was. I had great friends. School was never really my thing as far as, I managed to sort of scrape through with D's and E's most of my school life. But I loved school. I had a lot of friends. My family was great. I did go to about 4 different schools. Right. But I not because I was naughty, I just due to various things. But I really enjoyed my childhood. It was a great time.
Definitely not academically gifted, I suppose, is the best way to put it. And I think there are so many people that have overcome that and become wonderful successes. I think probably most of the people in the broadcasting industry, for example. I don't know if it's what it is about it. But,
you hear about it all of the time now. Like, it's got nothing to do with your intelligence. It's just, unfortunately, the school system has to cater to the majority, and that's just the way it is. And now you don't fall through the cracks as much as I think you did back then.
That's right. I think someone famous once said, "I never let my schooling get in the way of my education."
Basically, yes.
No interest in going on to university or studying fashion. What were you going to do at the end of school?
Well, that was a funny thing. I remember I was at school, and at Form 5, I think it's called Year 11 now, my parents got called in, and I got called into the headmaster's office. The headmaster said, look, I don't think Peter's going to pass Year 6, Form 6 rather. I think he should go to TAFE. I really don't think it's his thing. And I remember thinking, I hate being told what I can't do. So my parents said, look, perhaps you should go to a TAFE or whatever. And I just said, you know what, I've done 11 years of school. I want to stay with my friends. I'm going to pass. I'll work really hard. And I was just irritated being told that I couldn't do it, so I actually did stay on, and I passed, and I got my HSC. And the minute I put my pen down for my last exam, I said, you know what, I'm never picking up another pen again, I'm never studying again, and I never have. So it just wasn't really my thing.
What did you do after that? I was reading that you're a hand model.
I was.
What's life like for a hand model?
Do what a boy's got to do to make money. So I worked at a nightclub, of course, while all friends went off to college, and I suddenly discovered a friend of mine worked in a modelling agency, and he said, you've got really nice hands. You make just as much money modelling hands as you do your face. So, I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And it's true, I was making like $150 $150 an hour. Now, this is, the early 80s. $150 an hour to a kid is a lot of money.
Yeah, very much.
I was, doing the hands for ANZ Bank and for all these sort of strange Coca Cola, and I was working like probably 3-4 times a day, making $1,000 a week, and my friends couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it either. So it's one of those strange jobs that, basically helped me get through my early 20s.
So you would be sitting there watching TV at night, and the ad had come on for Coca Cola and the can, and you'd say, "That's my hand."
It was a little degrading that would show somebody really good-looking face, and then they would cut to my hand because I had to pretend to be their hand. So it wasn't great for the ego, but it was very nice for the bank balance.
I was just going to say, if you walked in to be a model and you came out being a hand model, that's definitely
a little degrading.
Exactly. How did you come to make umbrellas? That was sort of a major step towards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Umbrellas was a strange thing. That was the first time I thought I'm going to go into business for myself.
Yep.
Back in the old days, remember when Melbourne used to rain a lot? It was always like the rainy capital.
Yeah.
And so I thought I'm going to make umbrellas, and I'm going to print on it something like typical Melbourne weather or shitty Melbourne weather or something bad. And I thought, I'll put an umbrella and I'll call them storm sticks, and I'll do all these funny slogans and put them on umbrellas.
Yeah.
And I did that, and very entrepreneurial. I mean, I don't know how I managed to do that. I think I just bought the umbrellas at the market and then got them screen printed. And I went around and sold them into stores, and they did quite well for, what I was doing. And I did that for 6 months. And I thought, okay, now that winter's over, what do I do? For summer, and that's when the whole pajama idea came up. And I thought the pajama idea would last me six months, like the umbrella idea, and it's been 23 years. So, took my second idea stuck.
A trip to Hong Kong apparently was key in discovering pajamas.
Yeah, I went to Hong Kong on a family holiday a few years before I started the pajama game, and I remember seeing these pajamas in the window of a store, and I said to my mum and dad, I must have been like 18 at the time.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, I love those pajamas," and they said, "You don't wear pajamas." I said, "Yeah, but I really like them," and they said, "But they're $70," and I said, "Yeah, okay." So I didn't get them, and the day before we went back to Australia, I said, I'm still thinking about those pajamas. I'm going to go buy them. So I went and I bought these sort of spotty basic pajamas, and it wasn't till I'd finished the umbrella thing and I was thinking, okay, what can I do next? And I remembered these pajamas, and I sort of pulled them out of my cupboard, and I sort of analysed why I was so attracted to something that really wasn't something that I sleeping in. So I realised what was attractive about these pajamas was they reminded me of my childhood, and they reminded me of like an innocent time when you had no stress, no worries.
Yeah.
You used to put on your pajamas, and that was you watched TV and went to bed, and there was something about the way pajamas were presented that had all these emotions flashing back. It was a very emotional sort of purchase. So my entrepreneur brain thought, well, perhaps if I got suckered into this, I can do the same to other unsuspecting consumers. And I was right. So it's been a journey ever since then.
Yeah, I can imagine. What about? It must have taken a lot of confidence to design women's pajamas. It must be very hard for a man to say, "Women, this is what you should wear."
Well, when I started, all I did was basic man-style pajamas for ladies. I knew that the ladies' market was where the money was, the business was. But I also knew that my friends at the time used to buy pajamas from Coles, those flannelette men's ones, and wear the men's ones. Because for the ladies' sleepwear back in 1987, there was really two types of consumers that the market was catering for. Was sort of really Little House on the Prairie, virginal white nighties, and then there was very femme fatale, red lacy stuff. And there wasn't really something that was for the modern girl who was about 20, and she was basically buying daggy men's pajamas.
Yep.
I thought, well, why don't I do groovy men's pajamas, but for ladies? So I basically just did that, and because it was so fresh and new at the time, even Calvin Klein wasn't doing sort of sleepwear and underwear back then. So I was really the first person to do that, and it just took off like wildfire.
Well, what was it like starting a business with very little experience? I mean, that takes a lot of confidence.
Well, I remember asking my dad for a $3,000 loan, and I figured out that's what I needed to buy the fabric, get the factory to do the samples. and he said, "Okay, I'll loan you the money," and he gave me $3,000, and I basically thought, if I can keep my overheads really low, work from home, start this off and see what happens, I'll give it a go. So I just sort of made about 20 pajamas from samples, and I thought, well, why not go straight to the top, and I'll go to Myer and David Jones and see whether they'll buy them. And everyone said, oh no, you can't do that, you have to go to boutiques first and work your way up to David Jones and Myers. And I said, no, I just want to start at the top. So I talked my way into getting an appointment there by pretending I was far more experienced than I was. And I went to David Jones first, and the lady buyer was, I was like 22. The lady buyer must have been about 60, which was for me very old, obviously. And she looked at my range and she said, you don't know what you're doing, like your buttons are on the men's side, you've got a fly on a lady's button, you don't know the sizings. And she really tore shreds out of me, and I'd lost a bit of confidence. I thought, oh, perhaps this wasn't such a good idea. Yeah. And I had an appointment with Myer about an hour later, and went in there, and fortunately for me, the buyer was on an overseas trip, and her assistant, who was about 24, came down and saw the range, loved it, got it straight away, and said, I'll just take whatever you've got now, I'm going to stick it on the floor as a tester, so if it sells, I'll talk my buyer into stocking you. Yeah. So we did that, and it sold within the first 24 hours, so that's sort of how it happened. And eventually, the funny thing is, I did have to go back. That buyer from David Jones who ripped me to shreds ended up calling me about a year later, begging me to stock to David Jones.
Yeah, well, that if one's got it, the other one needs it, don't they?
Yeah.